St. Peter's, I hope you're all ready for chapter 7 of the Legend of Kevin. This chapter is called Monkey Business. Mr. Mould, the head teacher, was sitting on the last little bit of the school roof, which stuck up out of the water. Like Max, he was wearing a diving mask and flippers, but of course he wasn't in his swimming trunks. That would have been far too undignified. He was wearing his usual suit and tie, and he was very wet. Kevin swooped lower, and Max saw that the water around Mr. Mould's perch was full of sea monkeys. They were blowing raspberries and pulling faces at the head teacher, and some of them were throwing things. "Help!" said Mr. Mould again, as a well-aimed whiteboard rubber bounced off his head. Poor Mr. Mould. He didn't think anyone had an excuse to take a day off school just because they happened to be underwater, so he had put on his flippers and turned up for work as normal that morning. But when he got there, he found the school had been invaded by sea monkeys. The mischievous creatures were having a great time pretending to be children, and they were making even more noise and even more mess than real children. When Mr. Mould arrived, the monkeys all clustered around him, making faces and blowing underwater raspberries. "Now you cut that out, you horrible little," said Mr. Mould. But horrible little what? When kids misbehaved, he called them horrible little monkeys. But sea monkeys were monkeys already, so it probably wouldn't be much of an insult. While he was still trying to think of what to call them, the monkeys rushed at him, and he had to swim as fast as he could to the surface. This is how he came to be perching on the roof, while the monkeys swam around below him, hooting with laughter and making rude remarks about his flippers. He had been up there all morning. Once a sort of boat had gone by, and he had shouted to it to come and help him, but it turned out it was just 2 guinea pigs floating in a hutch, and they sailed right past. Just when he was thinking that he might have to swim home through a whole shoal of sea monkeys, he saw the plump white shape of Kevin come flapping overhead. "Help!" he shouted. "Help! Help!" Now, some children might not bother to rescue their head teacher from sea monkeys. Some children might think that being stuck on a school roof surrounded by floodwaters and marauding monkeys is a pretty good place for a head teacher to be, and that the best thing would be to leave them and pretend that you hadn't heard their cries for help. But Max was not that sort of child. He only had to think about it for a short time before he decided he was going to try and rescue Mr. Mould. Kevin flew down towards the roof, but the monkeys just thought that added to the fun. They started throwing things at Kevin too. The poor pony flinched as soggy maths textbooks and plastic trays from the school canteen whizzed past his ears like frisbees. Max almost slipped off his back. Kevin flew higher. "Too many monkeys," he whined. But Max had an idea. He rummaged among the shopping and pulled out a bag of frozen broccoli. He thought those little frozen florets would be just the right thing to scare sea monkeys away. He ripped the bag open with his teeth and told Kevin to fly down low again. As the pony went swooping over the water towards Mr. Mould and the sea monkeys, he shouted, "Bombs away!" and tipped out the bag of broccoli. The hard green blobs of frozen veg made white splashes all around the sea monkeys, and he hit quite a few of them. They shrieked with surprise, but they didn't scatter or dive back into the water as Max had hoped they would. They stayed on the surface in a big clump, shouting and giggling at Max. "Eep! Misters!" they squealed. "You're rubbish!" "You smell!" Max yelled back. It was a bit of a rude thing to say, but it was true. Even from up there in the sky, on Kevin's back, he could smell the grubby little monkeys. They smelt like his old PE socks, only worse. They smelt like boiled Brussels sprouts and damp towels and school toilets. "You stink!" Max yelled, but the monkeys just laughed. "Eep, eep, eep!" "They like being stinky," said Kevin. "They're sea monkeys." That gave Max another idea. "Fly back down," he said. And as Kevin turned mid-air, they swooped back over the school roof. He unscrewed a cap of the fruity fresh bubble bath and upended it. Gloop! All the liquid poured out. It splashed all over the sea monkeys and it spilt into all the water around them. Ack! Ick! Ack! They said, looking at one another in confusion. They sniffed the stuff that covered them. They didn't like this fruity, fresh smell one little bit. They didn't know it was bubble bath. The whole idea of baths was very new to sea monkeys. Quick, said Max, zwoosh it up. Kevin belly flopped into the water and started swimming around the monkeys, his little legs churning in the water like egg beaters. The monkeys yelled and swam towards him, but before they could reach him, he was hidden by a great wall of bubbles. The monkeys squealed and chittered. They flapped about in the water, trying to brush the bubbles off, but that just made it worse. Eep! They wailed. Ah! We're all clean! Kevin took off again. He soared over the struggling, bubbling monkeys and hovered just above the school roof while Mr. Mould climbed onto his back behind Max. Thank you, Max, the head teacher spluttered. I'll let you off homework for a whole week for this. Kevin flew lower and more slowly now that he had the whole teacher to carry as well as Max and the shopping. But the monkeys were hidden in a cloud of bubbles and they didn't see him. By the time they fought their way out, furious and fruity fresh, Kevin was just a tiny dot in the distance, flying home towards Max's flat. The monkeys threw pencil sharpeners and things after him, just to make themselves feel better. Then they went back underwater and started writing rude words on the school walls. They didn't even spell them properly, or bother to use capital letters and full stops. It was an absolute disgrace. So there we are, we've left them flying off, all dressed in their scuba wear. Let's see what's going to happen next. Take care everybody, I'll see you soon. Bye!